Captain Ethan Rourke had always considered himself ready for anything space could throw at him. A veteran pilot of the United Earth Exploration Corps, he had faced meteor storms, rogue comets, and hostile planetary wildlife. Yet nothing had prepared him for the strange beauty and danger of Velora 9. The planet glowed faintly under the light of its two suns, painting the skies in shades of purple and gold. From the shuttle, Ethan could see massive floating mountains and rivers that shimmered as if liquid light flowed through them. It was breathtaking, but he knew beauty often hid danger. Ethan's mission was simple, at least in theory. He and his small crew of scientists were to survey the uncharted regions of Velora 9 and gather data on the life forms that inhabited it. Reports suggested that the planet had signs of intelligent life, but no human had ever made contact. The possibility both excited and unnerved him. He had trained for encounters like this, but he had never imagined what would happen next. As the shuttle descended, alarms suddenly blared. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Sensors were picking up fast-moving energy signatures approaching their location. "What the hell is that?" he muttered under his breath. The cockpit flickered with red warnings. The energy blasts were growing stronger, moving faster than anything Ethan had seen before. Before he could fully analyze the threat, the shuttle shook violently. Panels sparked, and a deafening roar filled the cabin. One of the blasts hit just meters from the craft, throwing it off course. The scientists screamed as alarms blared. Instinct took over. Ethan's hands moved with practiced precision, stabilizing the shuttle while scanning the source of the attack. And then he saw her. She appeared almost out of nowhere, running across a jagged cliff that overlooked the glowing rivers below. Her skin shimmered in shades of silver and blue, almost as if the light of the planet itself flowed beneath it. Her eyes, large and luminous, locked onto his for a brief moment, filled with fear. Princess Lyra of the Elari. He had only seen images in intelligence reports, never imagined encountering her in person. She was even more striking in real life, graceful yet unmistakably in danger. The next blast came without warning, larger than the first, tearing the landscape around her. Ethan didn't think. He didn't hesitate. He activated the shuttle's external harness and sprinted towards her. The ground beneath him cracked from the shockwave of the blast, rocks tumbling into the glowing river below. He reached her just in time, throwing himself over her to shield her from the deadly energy. The blast hit them both, a deafening roar filling his ears, and everything went black. When Ethan opened his eyes, he felt disoriented. The first thing he noticed was the light, soft, pulsing, and warm, different from the harsh glare of Velora 9's suns. He tried to move, but his body felt strangely heavy, yet weightless at the same time. Slowly, his vision cleared, and he realized he was no longer on the cliff or near his shuttle. Instead, he lay on a smooth, elevated surface, surrounded by towering crystalline structures that refracted light in every direction. The air smelled faintly sweet, almost metallic, and the temperature was perfect, not too hot, not too cold. Then he noticed them. Hundreds of figures surrounded him, all staring intently. The Elari court. Tall and elegant, with iridescent skin and intricate patterns glowing faintly across their bodies. Some carried ceremonial staffs, others had blades that shimmered with light. Their expressions were unreadable, a mix of curiosity, suspicion, and authority. Ethan's heart raced. He had read about alien courts, but nothing in training could have prepared him for this. Where am I?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. From the center of the crowd stepped the figure he had shielded, Princess Lyra. She looked unharmed, though her eyes were wide with a mixture of relief and caution. She approached him gracefully, her movements almost fluid, yet every step seemed deliberate and measured. She spoke in a melodic tone, and Ethan's translation device immediately converted it into words he could understand. "You have saved my life," she said softly, her eyes studying him intently. "That act, it is not forgotten here." Ethan blinked, still trying to process. I just did what anyone would do." "You were about to..." He stopped, realizing how inadequate words felt in this situation. "I didn't know it meant..." this. Lyra's gaze softened slightly, but the attention of the court remained unwavering. Ethan realized that his simple act of shielding her carried immense weight in this alien society. The Aelari were known for their strict codes of honor, and apparently, this code viewed his actions as extraordinary. "You are in the court of Valora," Lyra explained. "Here, every action is measured, every gesture examined. You have done what no human has ever done. You have shown true courage without expectation of reward. The court will decide what this means for you." Ethan swallowed hard. "Decide? About me?" Lyra nodded. "Yes. In our culture, saving a life, especially that of a royal, is not taken lightly. You have drawn attention from all corners of our society. Some will see you as an ally. Others may see you as a threat. You must understand this. Human, what you did cannot be undone. There are consequences beyond what you can see." He looked around at the Aelari nobles. Their faces were calm but alert, their eyes fixed on him like he was some kind of puzzle they were trying to solve. Ethan had faced hostile alien species before, but the court's presence was different. There was power here, intelligence, and centuries of tradition. Every subtle movement mattered. One wrong glance, one misplaced word, and he could alienate them, or worse. What do you want me to do?" Ethan asked cautiously. Lyra smiled faintly, a gesture so small it almost went unnoticed. "For now, survive. Learn. Observe. And understand that your actions have consequences far beyond this moment." Ethan nodded, realizing that learning here would not be like training in the Corps. This was a world with rules he didn't fully understand. A society built on layers of custom and expectation. Even so, he felt a spark of determination. If he had shielded the princess from a blast, he could survive the scrutiny of an entire court. The Aelari began moving, forming a circle around him. Ethan noticed their eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light, tracking his every motion. They spoke in low tones among themselves, their language musical yet sharp, filled with sounds he had never heard before. He felt a strange mix of fear and awe. He was a human in a world completely alien. Yet the act of bravery that had saved a princess had given him a kind of respect, fragile, tentative, but present. As he was guided to stand in the center of the court, Ethan tried to make sense of what had happened. The blast he had shielded Lyra from it had been deliberate. Someone wanted her dead. That realization hit him like a shockwave. His instincts told him that danger still lingered here, perhaps even within the palace. And if that was true, his role was far from over. Lyra stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "You are not just a human who saved a life. You are now part of something far larger. The court will test you. Some may welcome you. Others may try to use you. And some may wish you gone. You must rely on your instincts, as you did when the blast struck." Ethan swallowed, feeling the weight of her words. He had been a soldier, a pilot, and a leader, but he had never faced a situation like this. Here, one act of courage had thrown him into a web of political tension, cultural complexity, and potential danger. But for the first time, he felt that human intuition, bravery, and quick-thinking qualities he had always relied on could give him an edge. The court began to deliberate, voices rising and falling like music. Ethan noticed the subtle signs of hierarchy: nods, pauses, gestures that indicated agreement or dissent. He began to pay attention, observing patterns, trying to read intentions. He realized that surviving this court would require more than strength or courage. It would require understanding, patience, and perhaps a bit of cunning. Hours passed. Or perhaps minutes. Time seemed different here. Ethan felt exhausted but focused, every sense heightened. He caught glimpses of the palace architecture. Walls that pulsed with light. Floors that seemed to float above some unseen surface. And intricate symbols that told stories he could not yet understand. The court's scrutiny did not lessen, but neither did it falter. He was learning, adapting, surviving. Finally, Lyra addressed the court. This human's actions are undeniable. He saved my life without hesitation. That is a quality we value." She paused, scanning the room. "We will allow him to remain, for now, under observation. He will learn our ways, and we may learn from him in return." A murmur ran through the court. Some nodded, others frowned, but no one challenged her openly. Ethan exhaled, feeling a cautious sense of relief. He was still alive, still standing, and still capable of influencing what happened next. As he was led to a place where he could rest, Ethan glanced at Lyra. "I don't know what comes next," he said quietly. She smiled faintly. "Neither do I. But together, we may survive whatever the future holds." For the first time since he had arrived on Valora 9, Ethan allowed himself a small measure of hope. He had shielded a princess from a deadly blast. And though he had woken up in a court full of alien eyes, he realized that this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he knew about courage, loyalty, and humanity. Ethan spent the first hours after his introduction to the Aelari court in stunned silence. The palace, still glowing with its strange soft lights, was both magnificent and intimidating. Every surface seemed alive, every reflection dancing across the walls like tiny living beings. He could feel the hum of energy in the air, subtle and constant, almost like a heartbeat. Yet the beauty of this place did nothing to ease the tension in his chest. He had saved Princess Lyra's life, but he now understood that in doing so, he had stepped into a world of strict rules, politics, and power he had never faced before. Princess Lyra guided him through the palace halls, her movements graceful and precise. Yet there was a firmness in her step that spoke of authority and experience. Ethan noticed the curious glances of the court members as they passed. Some studied him with polite interest, while others looked with suspicion, or even disdain. He understood instinctively that this society was layered with hierarchies, and that every word and action could shift the balance of favor or disfavor. "Why are they watching me like that?" Ethan asked quietly as they moved through a corridor lined with crystalline columns. "They are trying to understand you," Lyra said softly. "Humans are unpredictable. Your species acts with emotion, instinct, and intuition. The court sees these traits as both dangerous and intriguing. Few beings here act without careful thought, but you do. That is rare." Ethan nodded slowly. He had been trained for unpredictability in combat. But this was different. Here, his survival depended on understanding behaviors, not just reacting to attacks. The court would test him, he realized. Every glance, every gesture, every word might carry meaning he could not yet grasp. They entered a chamber that glowed faintly from above and below, a circular room with platforms that floated several feet above the ground. At its center, a massive crystal pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light, illuminating the faces of those gathered. This was the main hall of the court, and the people here were important nobles, warriors, and advisors who influenced the fate of the Aelari people. Ethan's heart raced as he stepped forward. Guided by Lyra. "You will observe first," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do not speak unless spoken to. Watch. Learn. Every movement, every expression tells a story. The court will test you, but you must remain calm." Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. He had faced alien life before, but he had never experienced a society so tightly controlled and so intensely observant. The Aelari watched him, not with weapons drawn, but with scrutiny, as if every reaction was a message to be interpreted. The court session began with formalities. Elders and advisors spoke in melodic tones, discussing matters of governance, resource distribution, and alliances. Ethan listened carefully, using the translation device, but he quickly realized that understanding the words was not enough. He had to watch the subtle signs, the tilt of a head, the narrowing of an eye, the slight shift in posture that hinted at hidden tensions or disagreements. One of the older nobles, a tall figure with glowing patterns running across his arms, approached Lyra. His voice was calm but carried authority. "Princess, this human's actions are unprecedented. How can we be sure he does not pose a threat to our society?" Lyra's eyes met Ethan's briefly. He saw a flicker of reassurance. "We cannot know for certain," she said, "but his courage and quick thinking are undeniable. He has saved my life. And in doing so, he has demonstrated qualities we value highly." There was a murmur among the gathered members, some nodding, others frowning. Ethan noticed that a few of them were whispering among themselves, glances darting toward him. He realized that within moments of arriving, he had become a subject of debate. He was no longer just a human. He was a variable in the political calculations of an alien civilization. After the formal discussion, Ethan was escorted to a smaller chamber, where he would reside while under observation. The room was spacious, with soft glowing walls and a platform that seemed to float slightly above the ground. Despite its alien appearance, it was comfortable, and he could rest. But he knew rest here was temporary. The court would observe him constantly, and he needed to be ready for the next test. Lyra lingered, speaking softly. "The court values strength, intelligence, and honor. You have shown one of these. You must now prove that you can navigate the others. Observe, adapt, and act with care. The next days will reveal much about both you and our people." Ethan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had faced danger head-on before. But this was different. Here, survival depended on awareness and adaptation, not just skill. He realized that his human instincts, once considered crude or reckless by alien standards, might actually give him an advantage if he used them wisely. Over the next several hours, Ethan began to explore the palace under the careful supervision of aides. The architecture fascinated him, the walls pulsed with light and patterns that seemed to communicate something. Though he could not yet decipher the meaning, the air itself seemed alive, carrying faint currents that tickled his skin. He passed areas where court members practiced ceremonial movements, moving with precision and grace. Every action seemed calculated, deliberate, and meaningful. He noticed that the Ayalari paid close attention to subtle hierarchies. A simple gesture of respect toward one noble could elevate his standing, while the same gesture toward another could be seen as insolence. He began to understand that this court functioned on a level of social awareness far beyond human norms. One misstep could have consequences beyond what he imagined. Despite the pressure, Ethan felt a strange exhilaration. He had trained for crises, and this was a different kind of crisis, a social and political one. He realized that his human traits, courage, intuition, and adaptability, were his greatest assets here. If he could learn the rules of this society, he might not only survive but thrive. That evening, as he rested on the floating platform of his chamber, Lyra returned. She sat across from him, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the room. "You are learning quickly," she said. "Few outsiders can survive even a single day in the court without faltering. Your instincts serve you well." Ethan shrugged, trying to appear modest, though he felt the truth of her words. "I don't know how much of this I can really understand," he admitted. "Everything is so different. So many rules I can't see." Lyra nodded. "That is true for all who enter this court. But humans, you see patterns differently. You notice opportunities where others see none. That is why you survived the blast, and it is why you may survive the court." Ethan felt a flicker of hope. The princess had been saved, and now she believed in his ability to navigate her world. That belief, fragile as it was, gave him strength. He knew the court would continue to test him. But for the first time, he felt that perhaps he could meet their expectations. The next day, Ethan attended his first formal audience. The chamber was larger than any he had seen, filled with hundreds of Ayalari. The air hummed with quiet energy, and the floor seemed to shift slightly underfoot, creating a feeling of movement and life. At the center, Princess Lyra stood, regal and commanding. The nobles circled her, their expressions unreadable. Ethan observed silently, noting every movement. He saw the subtle ways the nobles communicated, how a slight tilt of the head or a raised hand could signal agreement or dissent. He realized that understanding these cues would be crucial. His human eyes and instincts might catch things that even the Ayalari themselves overlooked. The audience began with formal announcements. followed by discussions of trade, alliances, and resource management. Ethan listened carefully, using the translation device. But he paid equal attention to body language and tone. He noticed the tensions among certain factions, the whispered disagreements, and the careful diplomacy of Lyra herself. Every detail mattered, and he understood that survival here required more than courage. It required observation, patience, and subtle action. As the audience continued, Ethan began to see the value of human adaptability. While the Aelari moved with precise, rehearsed gestures, he could improvise, reacting in ways they could not predict. He realized that this unpredictability could be his strength, but it was also dangerous. One misstep, one poorly judged action, and he could lose the fragile respect he had gained. By the end of the day, Ethan felt exhausted but invigorated. He had observed, learned, and survived his first court session. The challenges ahead would be greater, but he had a sense that he could meet them. Humanity had always thrived in adversity. And here, in the heart of an alien society, his courage, instinct, and adaptability might make all the difference. As night fell, Ethan looked out from a balcony over the glowing city of Valora 9. The planet seemed alive, every light and shadow pulsating with energy. He knew he was far from home, surrounded by beings he barely understood, yet he also knew that he had a role to play, a role that could change the course of this world, and perhaps others. And for the first time since the blast, he allowed himself a small, confident smile. He had survived the first test. Now, he had to prepare for the challenges the court would throw next. The days ahead would be filled with intrigue, danger, and discovery. But Ethan Rourke was ready, for in this alien world, humanity had already shown its greatest strength: courage, adaptability, and the ability to face the unknown and prevail. Ethan had spent days learning the ways of the Aelari court, observing, listening, and trying to understand a society that was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Every gesture, every tone, every subtle shift in expression carried meaning. At first, it had been overwhelming. The court's strict rules of behavior, the delicate balance of power, and the constant scrutiny left him exhausted. Yet with each passing hour, he began to notice patterns, small weaknesses, and opportunities hidden in plain sight. It was during a ceremonial gathering that Ethan realized just how different human intuition could be. The court had gathered to celebrate the seasonal alignment of Valora 9's suns, an event that occurred once every decade. Nobles dressed in elaborate robes, their glowing patterns shifting to indicate rank and achievement. Lyra, radiant in her ceremonial attire, stood at the center of the chamber, acknowledging the court with a grace that captivated all present. Ethan, dressed in garments that Lyra had arranged for him, felt out of place yet strangely confident. He had begun to understand that being human in this environment could be a strength. The ceremony proceeded smoothly at first, but Ethan noticed a subtle shift in the crowd. A faction of nobles whispered to each other, their gestures cautious but deliberate. Something was wrong. His instincts, honed from years of piloting through danger and facing hostile threats, told him to watch closely. Then he saw it. A figure slipping through the crowd toward Lyra, moving with precision and intent. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The figure carried a small energy device, the kind that could cause devastating harm in the blink of an eye. It was an assassination attempt, and the court was completely unaware. Without thinking, Ethan sprang into action. Years of training in instinctive response and quick thinking guided him. He darted through the crowd, positioning himself between the figure and the princess. The Aelari froze, surprised by the sudden movement. In the next moments, Ethan acted on pure intuition. He grabbed a ceremonial staff from a nearby guard, using it to deflect the device as it activated. Sparks flew, the chamber shaking with the energy release. But Lyra was safe. The attackers were quickly subdued by the court's warriors, but the entire chamber had witnessed Ethan's actions. Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd. For a moment, the court was silent, Stunned by the audacity and skill of a human acting so decisively in their midst, Ethan's heart pounded, but he felt a quiet satisfaction. He had saved Lyra again. And in doing so, he had proven that human ingenuity could match even the most precise planning of the Aelari. Lyra approached him, her eyes filled with gratitude and something deeper respect. "You saved me again," she said softly. "Your instincts, they are unlike anything we have seen. The court will remember this day." Ethan nodded, catching his breath. "I just reacted. I had to. If I didn't—" He trailed off, knowing the sentence needed no ending. The court's reaction was immediate and mixed. Some nobles nodded in approval, recognizing the value of his quick thinking and bravery. Others frowned, skeptical of a human acting outside their carefully maintained order. Yet the overall sentiment leaned toward admiration. Ethan realized that his actions had shifted perceptions. Humans, once considered unpredictable and primitive by the Aelari, were now seen as capable allies, at least by some. Over the next days, Ethan began to use this new respect to learn more about the court's inner workings. He observed alliances, rivalries, and unspoken rules of influence. While the Aelari relied on strict protocols and tradition, Ethan's human adaptability allowed him to notice things they often overlooked. A subtle hesitation in a noble's stance, a fleeting expression of concern, small signals that revealed intentions and priorities. He also began to understand Lyra's position more deeply. As princess, she carried immense responsibility. Every decision, every interaction, affected not only her life, but the lives of her people. Ethan admired her strength and wisdom, but he also recognized the danger she faced. Within the court, some factions viewed her as a threat to their own ambitions. Others resented her authority. In a world where rules dictated behavior, yet ambition often bent those rules, the princess's safety was never guaranteed. Ethan's growing understanding allowed him to anticipate threats. He started devising subtle strategies to protect Lyra without drawing attention to himself. A shift in the arrangement of guards, a careful placement of energy barriers, and simple distractions, all human improvisations that the court had never considered. Each action was a quiet demonstration of human ingenuity, showing that courage and intelligence could complement the Aelari's precision. One evening, as the suns of Valora 9 dipped below the horizon, bathing the palace in golden light, Ethan and Lyra walked along a balcony overlooking the glowing city. The air shimmered with energy, casting patterns across their faces. Ethan felt a mix of awe and determination. "You face so many challenges here," he said quietly. "I can see why. The court is complex." Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It is. But you see things differently. Humans have a way of noticing what we miss. That is why you survived the blast. That is why you protected me again. You have a perspective that is valuable." Ethan smiled faintly. "I'm just trying to help. I never expected to be part of this world." Lyra's gaze softened. "You are part of it now, whether you expected it or not. And perhaps you were meant to be." The following days tested Ethan in ways he had not anticipated. The court subjected him to debates, ceremonies, and challenges designed to measure not just courage, but intelligence, diplomacy, and judgment. Ethan relied on his human strengths, adaptability, quick thinking, and observation to navigate these trials. He began to earn respect from some of the more skeptical nobles, demonstrating that humans could contribute to the court in meaningful ways. Yet danger remained ever present. Ethan discovered that the assassination attempt had been orchestrated by a coalition of nobles who opposed Lyra's leadership. Their plans were subtle, woven into court decisions and ceremonial arrangements. Observing their movements, Ethan realized that their ambition could destabilize the entire society if unchecked. His role had shifted from mere protector to strategic advisor, someone who could foresee threats and act before they manifested. One evening, Ethan gathered with Lyra in a private chamber. Maps and holographic displays floated around them, showing the movements of various factions within the court. "They are clever," Ethan said, tracing a line along a map. "They think they can manipulate events without being noticed." But humans, we see patterns. We improvise. Lyra studied him carefully. And you believe you can counter their plans? Ethan nodded. I have to. If I fail, more than your life could be at risk. This court, this planet, it depends on more than tradition. It depends on being ready for the unexpected. Lyra smiled faintly. Then I'm glad you are here, Ethan. Your courage is matched only by your insight. Together, we may preserve the stability of this court. Ethan felt a sense of purpose unlike anything he had known. He had come to Valora 9 as a pilot on a simple mission, yet he now understood that his actions had far-reaching consequences. His humanity, his courage, his intuition, his ability to act decisively, was no longer just a trait. It was a tool capable of shaping the future of an entire civilization. As days turned into weeks, Ethan's reputation grew. Some nobles who had initially doubted him now sought his counsel, intrigued by the possibilities his human perspective offered. Others remained wary, cautious of his unpredictability. Ethan understood that he could not win everyone over, but he also realized that he did not need to. Influence was measured in subtle shifts, alliances formed quietly, and actions that spoke louder than words. During one particularly tense council session, a debate erupted over the allocation of resources to distant territories of Valora 9. Factions argued heatedly, their glowing patterns flickering in sharp bursts as emotions rose. Ethan, observing the discussion, noticed a flaw in the logic presented by the opposing faction, a small miscalculation that could have far-reaching consequences. Without hesitation, he spoke. Your calculations assume uniform energy distribution, he said calmly. But if we consider variable fluctuations, the outcome would favor the other territories. Adjusting the allocation slightly would prevent failure. The room fell silent. The nobles exchanged glances, some nodding, others frowning. Lyra's eyes met his, filled with quiet approval. One by one, the council members considered his words. Finally, the leader of the assembly nodded. This human, he speaks wisely. Perhaps there is value in perspectives we have not considered. Ethan felt a quiet satisfaction. His human intuition, honed by years of experience and instinct, had found a place even in this alien world. He was no longer just a survivor. He was a participant, a force that could influence events and protect those he had come to care about. And through it all, his bond with Princess Lyra deepened. They shared strategies, insights, and moments of quiet reflection. Ethan came to understand not just her role as a leader, but the weight of responsibility she carried. He respected her strength, admired her wisdom, and felt a sense of loyalty that went beyond duty. Protecting her was no longer just a matter of survival. It was a commitment born from trust and shared purpose. For the first time since arriving on Valora 9, Ethan felt truly at home. He had faced danger, navigated a complex society, and earned a place in a court that had once seemed impenetrable. Humanity had shown its greatest strengths, courage, adaptability, and intelligence, and in doing so, had earned the respect of an alien civilization. Yet Ethan knew that greater challenges lay ahead. The factions opposed to Lyra's leadership would not rest. Hidden dangers awaited, and the stability of the court depended on vigilance, strategy, and the ability to act decisively when the moment demanded it. Ethan's journey was far from over. But one thing was certain. Humanity's unique qualities, its courage, ingenuity, and resilience, had already begun to leave an indelible mark on Valora 9, and as long as he remained true to those qualities, he knew he could face whatever challenges the court, or the universe, might throw at him. The palace of Valora 9 had grown quiet, as the twin suns sank behind the floating mountains, casting long shadows across the crystalline towers. Yet the calm was deceptive. Ethan sensed it immediately. From the subtle shifts in the air, the hurried whispers among palace attendants, and the brief flickers of concern in the eyes of Lyra's closest advisors, he knew danger was near. The factions that had previously tried to manipulate or harm Lyra were preparing for something greater. This time, it wasn't just an assassination attempt, It was a coordinated effort to destabilize the entire court. Ethan had spent weeks observing, learning, and understanding the Ilari court. He had begun to see the threads of alliances, rivalries, and ambitions woven tightly together. Now, those threads threatened to unravel entirely. The factions opposed to Lyra had quietly recruited allies from outside the palace, foreign mercenaries and rogue operatives who could strike at a moment's notice. If they succeeded, chaos would reign, and the fragile balance of Valora IX's government would collapse. Lyra stood on a balcony overlooking the city, her luminous eyes scanning the horizon. Ethan joined her, sensing the tension in her stance. "I've seen signs of preparation," he said quietly. "They're planning something big. Not just against you. Against everyone who supports the court." Lyra nodded, her expression grave. "I feared as much. Their ambitions are greater than we imagined. But we cannot retreat. We must act before they strike." Ethan looked at her, admiration and resolve mixing in his chest. He had grown to respect her not just as a princess but as a leader. She carried the weight of her people with grace and intelligence. Yet the burden of constant vigilance was clear in the lines of her face. "Then let's make sure they don't succeed," he said. "We can use what we've learned. Their plans are clever, but they underestimate humans." Lyra's lips curved slightly in a rare, determined smile. "Your instincts have saved me before. Together, perhaps we can save them all." Over the next several hours, Ethan and Lyra convened with her most trusted advisors. Maps and holographic displays floated above the table, showing the movements of the opposing factions. Ethan analyzed every detail, identifying weak points and predicting likely strategies. While the Ilari valued precision and tradition, his human approach, using intuition, improvisation, and quick adaptation offered new possibilities. "We can't rely on brute force alone," Ethan said. "They expect predictable responses. If we do the unexpected, we can gain the advantage." He outlined a plan that combined strategic positioning, diversionary tactics, and subtle psychological cues to mislead the enemy. Lyra and her advisors listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to cautious optimism as they realized the potential of his strategies. The next day, the threat revealed itself. A fleet of rogue ships approached Valora IX's atmosphere, carrying mercenaries and advanced weapons. The court was mobilized, warriors preparing for battle, energy shields activating, and defenses aligning along the floating mountains. Ethan moved through the command chamber alongside Lyra, issuing suggestions that leveraged human unpredictability. Small adjustments in fleet positions, timing of energy pulses, and unexpected maneuvers created confusion among the attackers. As the enemy landed on key platforms, Ethan noticed that a group had infiltrated the palace itself, intent on reaching Lyra. The corridor guards were skilled, but the intruders had tactics unfamiliar to the Ilari. He sprinted ahead, using his knowledge of human improvisation and quick decision-making to intercept them. With a combination of precise timing, use of environmental advantages, and simple tools from his gear, he neutralized the threat before the invaders could reach the princess. When he returned to Lyra, she was impressed. "You continue to surprise me, Ethan. Your methods, they are unlike anything we have trained for," he shrugged, catching his breath. "I just do what I think will work. You've given me the chance to act, and I've learned from watching your people. Together, we're stronger." Road. The battle continued for hours, but the court, guided by Ethan's strategies and Lyra's leadership, began to turn the tide. By using a combination of unpredictable maneuvers and careful coordination, they managed to isolate enemy forces, forcing them into retreat. The attacking mercenaries and rogue operatives were either captured or driven off the planet, their plans thwarted before they could achieve their objectives. In the aftermath, the court gathered to assess the situation. Ethan was no longer seen as an outsider or merely a guest. He had proven his value not only in protecting Lyra, but in contributing strategically to the survival of the entire society. Nobles who had once doubted him approached, offering gestures of respect and acknowledgement. The factions opposed to Lyra's leadership had been weakened, and the stability of the court was restored, though tensions still lingered. Lyra stood before the assembly, addressing her people. Today, we faced threats that could have destroyed our court, our traditions, and our way of life. Yet through courage, strategy, and unity, we prevailed. And in this victory, we recognize the strength not just of our own people, but of those who choose to stand with us. She paused, her gaze settling on Ethan. Humanity has shown us the value of courage, adaptability, and ingenuity. We welcome this strength among us, for it has saved many lives today, including my own. The court erupted in murmurs and nods of approval. Ethan felt a surge of emotion, pride, relief, and the deep satisfaction of having contributed meaningfully. He had come to Valora 9 as a pilot on a simple exploration mission. He had saved a princess from a deadly blast, but he had never imagined that his actions would lead to becoming a protector, strategist, and advisor to an entire alien civilization. In the following days, Ethan worked alongside Lyra to strengthen alliances, reinforce security, and ensure that the factions opposed to her could not rise again. His understanding of human ingenuity continued to complement the Alari's precision, creating a partnership that became the cornerstone of the court's new strategy. Slowly, the Alari began to see humans, not as outsiders, but as allies capable of thought, courage, and action that could match, and sometimes surpass, their own. Ethan and Lyra spent long hours discussing the future. They shared stories of their worlds, their dreams, and the responsibilities they carried. Through these conversations, Ethan came to understand Lyra's dedication, wisdom, and the burden of leadership. He also began to recognize the potential for friendship and trust across species, realizing that despite vast differences, courage, loyalty, and intelligence were universal. One evening, after a particularly long council meeting, Ethan and Lyra walked along the palace balcony, overlooking the city that glowed softly in the twilight. The twin suns had set, leaving the sky a deep violet, dotted with the first stars of Valora 9's night. "I never imagined I would find a place like this," Ethan said quietly. Lyra's gaze swept over the city, then settled on him. "And I never imagined a human could teach us so much. You have changed our world, Ethan, not just with your courage, but with your perspective, your decisions, and your willingness to act when needed." He smiled faintly, humbled. "I just did what anyone would do for someone worth saving. But I've learned so much too, from you, from your people, and I think, together, we can make things even better." Lyra's expression softened. "Yes. Together, we can ensure that our society survives, adapts, and thrives. And perhaps, humans and Alari can learn from each other in ways we never imagined." In the weeks that followed, Ethan's role became more formalized. The court recognized him not only as a protector of Lyra, but as a trusted advisor and strategist. He was no longer merely a visitor. He was an integral part of the Alari court. His presence brought a new perspective, bridging human ingenuity with Alari precision. The story of his bravery spread throughout the court and across Valora 9. Tales of a human who had shielded a princess, who had acted decisively in the face of danger, and who had helped save an entire civilization, became part of the cultural narrative. Children were told stories of his courage, and leaders began to consult with him on matters of strategy and diplomacy. Humanity, through Ethan, had earned admiration, respect, and a place in the annals of Alari history. As months passed, Ethan reflected on his journey. He had come to Valora 9 on a mission of exploration, faced life-threatening danger, navigated a complex and alien court, and ultimately helped prevent disaster. He had discovered the value of human traits, courage, adaptability, and ingenuity in a world far removed from Earth. And through it all, he had formed a bond with Princess Lyra, one built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. Together, they had faced challenges that neither could have managed alone, and together, they had changed the course of a civilization. Ethan knew that challenges would continue to arise, as they always did in any society, but he also knew that humanity had a role to play in Valora 9. A role defined not by dominance, but by courage, intelligence, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. Standing once again on the balcony, watching the glowing city below, Ethan allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. He had shielded a princess from a deadly blast, faced countless challenges, and survived a world that had once seemed alien and incomprehensible. Humanity had triumphed, not through superior technology or sheer numbers, but through qualities that had always defined it: courage, quick thinking, and the ability to adapt and persevere. Lyra joined him silently, her presence a reminder of the lives his actions had touched. Together, they looked out over the city, a world saved and strengthened by a human who had dared to act when it mattered most. For Ethan, this was not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where humans and Alari would walk forward together, stronger than either could be alone. And in that moment, he realized the truth of what he had always believed: that humanity, when it acted with courage and intelligence, could rise to meet any challenge, no matter how alien or impossible it seemed.